to you because it's really valuable. So these are all 24 of your pastel pencils, okay? And what the pencils, when you get the pencil, let me just open one up. Actually, I'll just hold it up. When you look at the pencil, on the pencil, there's a number. Okay, so look at the actual number on the pencil. And you'll see that it says 1400 slash something, okay? All of them are gonna say 1400 slash something. So for this up here, these are all your tints, these are your hues, these are all your tones, okay? What a tint is, the color mixed with white. You don't really know the true color of something until you mix it with white. And so what we have on here is the white color here. And then obviously white with white is white. So this white would have been 1400 slash 100, okay, to get that white, to get this hue. And then to get the tone, you're mixing it with a gray, okay? So in this case, I'm mixing it with the complement just to help neutralize it, okay, instead of like black. Over here, I've got this kind of like tanny looking color. So that'll be 1400 slash 105, just so you understand, okay? And so forth and so on, all the way down to black over here, okay? When you have, so this is gonna be the pure pastel in the middle. That's what it looks like if you just draw it out, okay? Now for us, we have, let me backtrack a little bit. We've got, let's see where to go. Oh, I don't think I opened it. Let me open it. We've got a color wheel, okay? So here's our color wheel that we're looking at. And for this color wheel, you're gonna have your primary color, yellow, red, and blue, okay? To make a secondary color, orange, purple, and green, you need two primaries to mix together. So if you mix yellow and red together, you're gonna get orange, red and blue together will get purple or violet, and blue and yellow together will make green, okay? And then to get the tertiaries, you have to have a primary and a secondary together. So you can have yellow and orange together, primary, secondary, to get your yellow orange, which is a tertiary color. Orange red, same thing, mixing that together to get the orange red, which is the tertiary color. So we got all the colors here, well, not all of them, but the main colors here. And what I've done is I've put the primaries in circles. And again, this is using the Stabilo CarbOthello Pastel set of 24. I've put the primaries in circles because you may not know which yellow to use. And just keep in mind that none of these are true primaries. And so if you mix them together to get an orange, you may not get a true orange, okay? So just keep that in mind. So on this one, I have the yellow and the red and the blue in circles. So you can see me putting 205, 305, and 405 in circles. I have my secondary colors, green, orange, and purple in like a cloud kind of shape. And so I've done that up here. So you know which color we're working with, okay? And then for the tertiary colors, I've given you arrows. So I put together, let's see if I'm doing this right. Yeah, so 205, 215 would have been this yellow orange up here. 365 would have been this one down here. 460 would be this one over here. 570 is this one up here. And to get the orange red, I mixed the 305 and the 205 with the 222, if I'm not mistaken, okay, to get this one over here. So those are all your colors, okay? Now you can divide this up into warm and cool. So if you see here how I've drawn this little squiggly line coming down the color wheel here, that just means that most people think of yellow, orange, and red as warm colors, which means they pop out. You typically use them in the light mask. And you want to group together green, blue, and purple in the cool zone, which is the shadow mask, excuse me, which is the shadow mask, okay, which means they recede. Warm colors will pop out, cool colors will recede. Now, the reason why I say most people think of that is because if you think of a purple, you automatically think of cool, but remember, you can have a cool, let's say a warm, let me rephrase this. If you think of red, most people think of that as warm, right? But you can have a cool red, which means you're using more of the tertiary color here. You've got a little bit of purple mixed into that red, like a burgundy, for example, could be more of a cool red. Same thing with green. You think of green as being a cool color, right? Because on the side with the cool. But green could also be a warm color if you use some yellow into it to make a lime green. Okay, so just so you understand, okay? This little blob over here just means that whenever you use black 750, don't just use black alone. You have to mix it with something, okay? Because it sucks all the attention away from all other colors. So typically I'll put maybe a purple, which is what you see on the left side, or I'll put a blue, which is what you see on the right side, just to kind of offset that. We have our complementary colors. Complementary colors are going to be opposite on the color wheel. So in this case, we've got yellow and purple, okay, our complementary colors. We've got, so the primary and the secondary. We've got blue and its complement is orange, and we've got red and its complement is green, which is why when you're walking down the Christmas aisle and you see all that red and green, it's kind of like pulsating, right? So here's what happens. When you put them side by side, they pulsate, they accentuate each other. So if you get into interior design, you'll notice how like when you go look at model homes, they'll have a lot of, I think blue and orange are like the common things, right? So they'll have a lot of that blue and orange theme in the house, right? Because they complement each other. So blue and orange, red and green, yellow and purple. And then if you mix them, they neutralize. So you want to keep that in mind as well. So that means that if you had, let's say, this pack of gum right here, okay? And you can see how it's the derivative of a red, right? But if you look at, let's say, this cap, okay, I don't know if you can see the difference, but this is really bright and this is kind of dull, okay? So to neutralize, which means to dull down the red, you can add green into it. And that'll dull it down because you can mix it with the complement. So that's color theory right there. Most people think, okay, if I have a red and I need to dull it down, I could use a gray. Well, yes, you're right. That'll also neutralize it, which means to dull that color down to more of a gray. However, if you mix a gray with your color, then you're also taking out the saturation of the color, the richness of that red. So if you want to maintain the properties of the red, but dull it down to make it look more, I guess, grayish, not as rich of a red, then mix a little bit of green. Now, remember, when you neutralize it, you have to be careful how much you put, okay? So like, for instance, if I have a yellow and I need to neutralize, it's too bright, I can add some purple into it. But if I add too much purple, I've then turned it into purple, you know? So it's like dominating the whole color. So it's gotta be like sprinkle of it. Think about like your complementary color, like using gold, very precious, right? Don't use too much. You can always add more, but you can't take it out. How I give the analogy of pastel, working with pastel, it's kind of like baking a cake, okay? So like when you bake a cake or cookies or whatever, bake anything, okay? And you're mixing something. Let's say that you needed, the recipe calls for primarily like, you know, the eggs, the milk, whatever. I don't know if it needs milk, but I'm just saying, hypothetical situation. Let's say you need eggs and you need sugar and flour and whatever, okay? Let's say you accidentally swapped the sugar for salt. I don't know how that happens, but it happens, okay? Because they look the same. And you gave it like 2 cups of salt, right? Now, when you're mixing that all up, you can't take, like, let's say you made that mistake, right? You say, I want to take that salt out. Well, you can't take the salt out. The salt is already there. It's already mixed, okay? The only thing you can do is, like in this case for pastel, wipe it all out, or in your case of cooking, start over, or you could try to counterbalance it by adding more sugar, but still, if you add more sugar, the salt's still there. You understand what I'm saying? So same thing here. If you have yellow and you put too much purple, you can't just say, let me put more yellow to offset that, because the purple is still there. So that would mean you'd have to erase it out and remix that, okay? So that's a big thing that people miss with pastel. They think they can just keep adding color into it. And the same principle happens for oil paint. If you're mixing something and the color's not what you want, yes, you can kind of pull it around if you know color theory. But if you put the wrong color in there, that color is going to keep influencing it no matter what you do, okay? So just keep that in mind, okay? We're going to go back to this picture. Now that you understand the complementary colors, you understand the primary colors. Now, again, with this set of 24, you're not really going to get the true primaries. So what I've done for you is I have blocked off the ones that I feel are closest to a primary color, okay? Which would be 1400/205, 1400/305, and I'll just stop saying 1400 because you guys get the point now. And then 405, okay? Those are going to be your three primary colors, the red, the blue, and the yellow, okay? Now, to mix the secondary, you could just mix this yellow and this red together, but I've given you also what I consider to be the closest already mixed secondary color. And that would be 222, 385, and it was hard for the green because none of them really look like a true green. We could arguably say it could be 530, or you could say it could be 575. This one's too blue, this one's too yellow, so neither one really work, but you could technically mix 530 and 575 to make a primary secondary green, so that could be an option too. And then we have these colors down here. So you've got your browns. Now this one could have been part of the yellows up here, kind of the yellows, oranges, but the way that it comes out, it's more like what we call muted, which means it's not as rich as, let's say, this yellow, right? It's not as rich as these. So I brought it down into the browns. So it can be used for like a lighter brown. And so if you can kind of separate when you see a color like 690, and you see, 205, 215, 222. Let's just zoom into this area here. You want to kind of think about, and again, look at the middle. You want to think about what would it belong to? Would it belong to the orange category? Would it belong to the yellow category? Would it belong to the browns? Because we've got yellow, browns, and oranges all in this area that I'm talking about. And that's kind of what I think is important about color theory, is being able to understand that the 205, of course, is going to be in the yellow zone, right? But what if I said the 690 was part of the yellows too, right? The problem with that for me, like I said, is it's not as rich as, let's say, a yellow that you're thinking about, but it does look like a really lighter version of maybe a brown. So I've grouped it here, okay? And then these two together could be your oranges. I've just given this one more of the secondary orange, okay? Okay, and so then we've got our 4 browns and then black, okay? Notice here for the black, I've mixed blue on top of it, okay? And then you can also see how I'm using the complement. So in this case, I've got the yellow, I'm using purple as the complement. For the white, you could mix a purple into it, or this one has a little bit of yellow in it. So I put a little bit of purple. You can use black. For the oranges, I actually used more purple because they're kind of yellowy oranges. So, I mean, you can choose whatever you want, but just, you can see how to dull it though. That's the thing. When you see this, see how I'm dulling it down, which means I'm muting it or desaturating it. Saturating is like the richness or brightness of a color. And I'm dulling that down, which means I'm neutralizing it to more of a gray by adding the complement, like I told you. Okay, so it's not as bright of a red, but it still looks like a red. So you got to control how much of that green you're putting in there. So these little dashes just represent the color that I've mixed to get the tone at the bottom, okay? And then you can see really the true color at the top. Now, why wouldn't we choose these two, 311 or 325 as the primary red? Because for me, when I mix them with white, they look more pink than they do red. And so you could argue, well, isn't pink, a derivative of red? Yes, it is. However, if you're trying to make a skin tone, let's say like this skin tone that you see down here, and you accidentally use 311 or 325 or even 335, you're going to make that person look like they're sunburned. So it's really important to kind of understand how having a little bit of that yellow, how this looks like almost like an orangey red, having a little bit of that yellow offsets that sunburnt quality of the figure and pulls it back to the skin tone that we need down here. Okay, so keep that in mind. All right, so how did I get this at the bottom? Let's zoom back out, okay? What I use to draw with is not pencil. I usually use my pastel to draw, okay? So I'm using the 655, this kind of, I call it like a brick red, to draw something out. And the reason why you want to do that is because if you use black, of course, black is going to mix with all other colors. An example, black and yellow make green. So if I had outlined this in black and then I went to go shade it, then obviously I'm going to start turning my figure green before I even can control it, just because of the black. I've found that something more red really does just turn into whatever skin tone, okay? Whether you're, darker skin tone, lighter skin tone, in the middle, it doesn't really matter. The red really does neutralize and fall into any color so that you don't see the outline. So what I'm saying is the sphere that you're looking at down here, you're not seeing a red outline. Same thing. This is another sphere. Just think about these as little heads. Okay. This one has hair coming off of it. But you're not seeing the outline. So you could have chose 305, but 305 is really bright. So more of a muted red, which would be its counterpart of a brown, that brick brown color. That's why I use 655. Okay. So I use that to draw it out. So I told you right here, draw it out with 655. So if you're drawing anything, try to opt out of using the graphite pencil. Graphite is more wax based. So if you press too hard, definitely does show. And you want the color itself to basically, what's the word? You want the color to just diminish into the drawing. You don't want to have to erase the line that you draw. You want it to just evaporate into your drawing. And that's why I use the pastel pencil over graphite, okay? Now, when I get into shadow mask, I map out my shadow mask using the blue, 405, primary blue. That just means that when I am drawing out the shadow mask, I'll go like this with my blue, and then I'll shade this whole area blue. Okay, same thing with this. And you'll see that on my YouTube video of me drawing Jessa, you'll see that blue coming into there as well. Let me clear this out, okay? When I go into my light, I want to map out my light mask. So there's this one right here as well, okay? So I put in a little bit of that yellow on here, and then I go directly into the red. I usually use more red than yellow, but you kind of have to balance it out, because if you put too much yellow, you can make the person look sick. And if you put too much red, you can make them look like they're on fire. So it's like a light layer of red over that yellow, okay? And then next, you're going to cover only the light mask with the 105, okay? So that's not quite white, but we'll cover the light mask. So that means that once you put down this kind of yellowish color, which isn't really yellow because it's 221, okay? Once you put down that, and then you put down the red, you're going to get this kind of peachy color. And then to see the actual color, you put this 105 on top, which will lighten it up and make it look like the color you're wanting, okay? Now, let's say you put that 105 on top and then you realize it's kind of like, see how this one looks really yellow and this one looks kind of more red? You could always go back and add 305 on top of it. So it's a little bit of like, do a little bit here, do a little bit there. It's a little push and pull, okay? So it's never going to be just like once you add it, you're done. Once you need a highlight, you save the 100 for the highlight. That's why I don't use the 100 to do the whole light mask, okay? Notice also I'm doing what we call cross hatching and cross contour. So when I shade, I'm shading, if you see my, my annotations here, one second. I'm shading back and, oh, sorry. Let me get the actual drawing up. There we go. Okay, here we go. I'm shading like this, okay? And then I do, that's cross hatching. And then I do cross contour so you can see me wrapping around the sphere itself, okay? So that's why it looks like it's filled in, but also looks like it's, you know, round and three-dimensional. Okay, when I get to the shadow mask, remember I would have had blue on here, okay? Next thing I'm gonna do is cover the shadow mask with 625, okay? Which is the brown, to basically, the blue, what that does is it sets the tone, sets the color into a shadow. You don't want to use black because we're working on a skin. So it covers that shadow mask and makes it separate from the light mask. It's one, but you don't want someone to look like they're a Smurf, right? So then you put that brown on top to what we call bring it back to the skin tone, neutralize that blue back down, okay? To soften the Terminator, believe it or not, you can actually use a 105 in between. So basically in between here, you can soften that edge a little bit by using that 105. It's not white, but you can use it for that, to soften that as well. For the core shadow, which is the darkest dark in here, I went in with actually a black, very light pressure. Because if it's skin tone, you don't want that person to look like they got, you know, punched in the eye or anything, okay? So very light. Then you're going to cover your core shadow with the purple. Because remember I said you never just go black, you have to cover it, okay? So then I went over just the core shadow with the purple. To show the Terminator, a teal color works beautiful right here. You can see it right there, okay? You can see it all the way down this side. The Terminator is the edge in which something goes from light to dark. So right here, I put that green. You can see it right here as well. Okay, and then let's see, let me move this out of the way. Okay, so then down here, you've got 1400, 655. I have found that reflected light's really good when you have a golden color, okay? So this 655 right here and the 215 up here, those two together make a beautiful reflected light. It's this golden color down here. So use that, okay? And then for the cast shadows, usually what I'm doing is something similar to what I did in my shadow mask, but not that golden color. So I have usually a blue underneath, a red, no, not a red. Yeah, no, do I have a red? Let me think. Blue, purple, brown, black, things like that to get that cast shadow, okay? All right, if you need to add hair, this was an example of gray hair, okay? So I was just showing like how that hair can come from the head. And then when I'm using that, I'm using the white first to get the waviness, get the strands, blocking it in. And then I'm going into the black in certain areas, so kind of closest to the face in the shadow mask, where the curl maybe dips a little bit of 205 to get that yellowy part of the hair in there. 405 to get the shadow mask to cool down. Excuse me. 635 to offset that a little bit, so you can see some of that brown creeping over here, coming from the face as well. And then 655 looking for any areas just to make sure it looks like the hair is coming from the skin. And then any what we call wisps of hair can be done at the top. Make sure in the process of doing all this, you're not smudging. So my YouTube video on pastels shows you me drawing and you don't see me smudging. The reason why, if you smudge with your finger, then you're compressing all of that pastel into the paper and it has no room for you to then layer on top. So I'm not saying it's like horrible to do, but if you're not usually trained in how to use pastel, you could easily mess it up. I give the analogy of your paper has different like tooth in the paper. So that means that the paper, like let's say sandpaper, for example, is really bumpy, right? So think about these little bubbles right here as and we're thinking about looking at the paper like this, like on the edge of it, okay? So if you have sandpaper, it's going to have a lot of what we call tooth to the paper, a lot of like buckets or ridges in the paper, okay? And so when you put your pastel down, it's going to hit on the top surface and then some of it's going to fall in the bucket, right? And some of it's going to go on the top, some in the bucket. And then when you add the next layer on, it gives a lot of room for the pastel to stick. So actually pastel on sandpaper or pumice paper, it gives a lot more layers because it can hold more. Does that make sense? Okay. Now my analogy is if you smudge, like I did right here, what you're doing is when you put that red layer down, you're compressing all of that pastel, not only on the surface, but into the pores of the paper. And then you're rubbing it back and forth. So you're sealing the buckets. That makes sense. So when I go to add the yellow, instead of my yellow mixing with the red, it just slides on the top because it has nowhere else to go. You've already filled the bucket in. And that's why over here, you can't really see, yes, you're going to get a color because you're mixing. You're going to get an orange. If you put yellow, red, and then yellow, you're going to get an orange. But it's going to look really flat because you've now taken the colors that are supposed to go like this and you've compressed them into each other like that. So they become very flat versus seeing something three-dimensional like so, okay? So over here, you can see all these colors. By the way, this right here is the same as this right here. It's just you're seeing all the colors because I'm doing more of this method. So the more you go back and forth with the pastels, the more they mix themselves and you don't really have to, you know, smudge. Sometimes I will smudge lightly. It's a light pressure with my finger. You may see that when you watch the video of me drawing Jessa. So it'll be like a light smudge, but nothing like this, okay? And then for the background, I used 450 and white. So blue and white to kind of contrast that. Typically, if you have a lot of cool, warm colors like your skin, you want to use some cool colors in the background. By the way, for an African-American skin tone, purples look beautiful in the shadow mask. So that's just a tip there as well, okay? let me exit out of this. I have something I want to show you. I did a drawing of J.J. Cole, and so I wanted to just pull that up for you guys right here. In this drawing, you can see that purple. Look at how that's so pretty, right? And then you can see these golden colors. So this is really helpful. So this is using NuPastel, Prismacolor NuPastel. But I did the same thing at the top where you see the hue in the center, which are the 12 set of pastel pencils, sticks, actually, in here. And then I have the tint at the top and then the shade at the bottom, okay? So to get this, I am using these mixtures. I'm using yellow, red, and white, okay? In that order. This one, yellow, red, white, brown, yellow, red. So it's a layer effect. To get the shadows, blues, brown, purple, brown, you have to sandwich. And the reason why I say that is no matter if you're working with sticks or pastel pencils, the color that you have on last is the color you're going to see the most. Okay, so see how the brown kind of tones everything down? So if I did it in a purple, it'd look really purple. The side on the right is the side that is not smudged. The side on the left is the side that is smudged. Now you may say, well, I prefer the one on the left. I get it, okay, but you're gonna have a really flat pastel. We can get the same colors by not mixing. And by the way, this one over here is not mixing. And this was like a 25-minute drawing from life, okay? No smudging. So you can see how the pastels will smudge themselves. You don't need to do all that, okay? All right, so let's move into, now you're learning about color, you know, the color, the pastels. Again, just a brief touch up on color theory here. Let's pull this up in 1 second. Let's see, what did I do? Or what did it do? I wonder if I close this, it's a little stupid there. No, I tried. Okay, let me pull it back up. So that's okay. I've got this. It's over here. Okay, we'll try it again. And then let's try to put this in full screen. Aha, okay, there we go. Now we're talking. Okay, so color theory, just to recap, we've been over all this already. So just to recap, okay. I have over here, warm colors advance and tend to be used in the light mask. So I've given you a division here. And then I have cool colors recede and are often used in the shadow mask, okay. Just to brush up on complementary colors, I put those side by side, yellow and purple, red and green, blue and orange. Complementary colors are opposite on the color wheel and consist of a primary and a secondary, like we spoke about already. Now here's the terminology you want to understand. We've got hue, we've got chroma, we've got saturation, neutralization, value. Okay, so hue, whenever I say hue, that's the color, pure color, right out of, like in paint, oil painting, it's right out of the tube. You know, if it's in pastel, it's the actual stick or the actual, pencil. Pure hue, it's just color, okay? Chroma is the purity of a hue. So freedom from white, gray, or black. Okay, so it's the intensity or saturation of a color. Saturation is the intensity of the color. So how intense is, like, this is super saturated right here, okay? Not as saturated as we go over here. Make sense? Okay. The opposite of saturation is neutralization. So I'd say this left side is saturated and over here you get neutral. Okay. So decreasing the color intensity by mixing it with gray, black, or white. Okay. So value is how light or dark a color is. Make sense? Okay. So here's red, which is the pure hue. And I may have gotten this backwards before, so I apologize if I got my tones and my shades mixed up, but here let's clarify, okay? The hue plus white is the tint. The hue plus black and white, which is gray, is the tone. And then the hue plus black is shade, okay? So when you saw me doing when I had the three, when I had the tint and the tone, or the hue and the tint, the hue, and then the shade, just making sure I had that right. It should have been tone, okay? And so I think the reason why I want to clarify is because on here, up here, it says shade, okay? So that should have been tone because I'm mixing with more of the complement, okay? But I think I got it right on this one, okay? When I mentioned that it is the tone right there, see? So I kind of, just wanted to clarify, okay? So that's the end of that slide. That's pretty simple, okay? And then the other one I want to show you is how color affects mood. Because as you're doing this, anytime you're working with color, you want to think about whatever colors you're dominating, whatever you're using, whatever you pick out in your compositions, how does that affect the mood of something, okay? So for instance, we've got two colors as an example. One is going to be pink, one is going to be red. Now, again, pink comes from red, right? Pink is a tint of red, but they have opposite meanings. That's what's important to understand. So when you're working with pink, if you wanted to, let's say, do a painting for your grandma, just as an example, okay? Or if you wanted to give something on Mother's Day, you would not use red, you would use pink, okay? Pink shows more compassion, sincerity, sophistication. It's very sweet, it's very romantic, youthful, happy, spirited. So when you think of red, that is also romantic, but it's more of a lustful romantic. This one's more of a sweet romantic. So it depends on what you use. The meaning of that can completely change your work. Okay, so I wanted to walk this through with you guys, okay? Now, even when you look at it, that's the thing, like even just looking at this changes the way I feel, right? If I go here, I feel like calm, and it's like, it's very sweet, and it's like, oh, you know, I go here and it's like, in my face. It makes me feel a sense of not anger, but like tension. You guys feel that? Okay. So it's excitement, strength, love, energy, sexy, dynamic, stimulating, provocative. Completely different meaning from pink, right? All right, let's go to the next one. Orange is a great color to use for confidence, okay? A lot of times when they have like, let's say you have a business, you have a meeting room where everyone meets together, you should have orange in there, okay? Because what that signifies or shows the emotion of confidence, success, bravery, sociability. It's a very energizing color, okay? And it's a great color to use to have energy, but not tension. Because I know red can give you energy, but it can also give you negative energy, okay? It can be very inviting, it's friendly, it's vital, tangy, okay? So orange is a great color for like socialization, meeting rooms. Think about that when you paint rooms, right? Or when you're decorating rooms, okay? Yellow, I think of that as more, it makes me happy. You think of warmth, like sunlight, creativity, happiness. A lot of times they use like a very mild yellow in baby rooms because that does make someone feel very calm. Okay, so don't paint your baby room red. You wouldn't do that anyway, but just, you know. It's also very luminous and very enlightening, okay? The next one, when you think of green, what do you, like without reading the other side, what do you think about? Probably think about nature, like Mother Nature, being grounded, like, you know, you think of that eco-friendly kind of feeling. So nature, healing, freshness, quality, soothing, refreshing, right? So if you go to spas, you'll see a lot of like turquoise and greens and things like that, because blue is more tranquil, right? We'll get into that. And then you've got the healing nature of the green, so that turquoise balances it out. Going into blue, so it's a very trustworthy color, peace, loyal, competence. It's very constant, like rivers, very quiet, dependable, cool color, very serene. Makes you think of the ocean, makes you think of vacation, makes you feel good, okay? Purple, it's a very powerful color, okay? You'll notice we just got done with Halloween recently, okay? So depending on when you watch this video. But purple, you'll notice that a lot of Halloween includes purple, oddly enough, okay? So you'll have the orange and the black, yes. But if you see the lights, a lot of the lights are purple based. Why? Okay. Purple is a very regal color. A lot of, like, when you look at art history, the cloaks of like kings would be purple because it's a very royal color. When you wear purple, it's a very regal and royal color. It means you have stature, okay? Very luxurious, spiritual as well. So if you tint the purple, you use a lighter purple with white, then you go into the spiritual round, okay? The deeper the purple, the darker it gets. The lighter the purple, the more spiritual it gets. So it's just the way that you change the value of the purple can also change the meaning of the color itself. So lighter, spiritual, ambition, it's very sensual also, very elegant and mysterious. And it's mysterious the more you get into the black range. So like I said, the darker it gets, the more mysterious it becomes, which was why it is associated with Halloween as well. Brown is a very dependable color, very rugged, rustic. You think of like log cabins, you think it's, oh, it's really sturdy, you know, those rugged boots, mud, you know, things like that, right? Very dependable. Your coffee is very dependable. Trustworthy, simple, sheltering, wholesome, rich, durable. It's going to last, okay? And then keep these things in mind when if you're designing characters, you know, their outfits, the way that you dress them. If you put them in an environment, you can make someone very powerful feel or seem very vulnerable by putting someone who is wearing reds and purples and blacks into an atmosphere of like soft yellows, soft purples, make them feel very vulnerable in their environment just based off color. Okay. Black, as we all know, is very formal, you know, black tie events. Security guards don't wear light baby pink shirts. They wear black shirts typically, okay? So it's very dramatic, sophisticated, slimming, if you will. Security makes you feel secure, very powerful, also mysterious. So that purple and black together, that mysterious quality there. Strong, classic, and elegant. And then you go into white. When you look at this, you feel very light, okay? So it's very clean. If you see how, you know, those homes that are like huge homes and it's like everything's white, the walls are white, the piano's white, the couch is white. It just feels very like nothing's there. Even though there's furniture there, it feels very light, not heavy, okay? So the lighter you get, the lighter in value you get, the more pure your home will be. But you've got that clean, simple, innocent, honest, lightweight, pristine, pure. You think of angels, bright color, okay? Now, how does this relate to different movies? That's important too. Start to look at the color that happens while you watch movies, like The Revenant, okay? This particular scene where if you've watched the movie, you know the scene, but it's just that kind of desolate where it's just a whole bunch of nothingness, almost loss of hope, right? That cold feeling. So you've got those blues in there, but also very dependable, something that you feel like you can get through, you know, so that's where that brown comes in. It makes it feel like he's protected in a way with that brown, okay? Frozen as well. You know, seeing that color scheme here is really important. Those warm versus cools, battling those warm versus cools, you know, the cool, the ice, and then the warm, the sun, and then how the scene is so dynamic with both of them. Forrest Gump, again, that dependable and also kind of complementary colors as well. That brown is, you know, has the red in it, okay, versus the green. So it really does make them pop out in this particular scene. But you get that sense of nature also. Avengers, notice the color palette here is very different from, let's say, this color palette, where everything's kind of like greens and, you know, reds, purples. It doesn't seem very drastic, but here it's like, where did this come from? Where did this come from? You know, so that sense of power, that anger, red, and then also toning that down with the yellow, you know, but having those pops of colors and primary colors. So the blue, the red, and the yellow. So pay attention to that too. Edward Scissorhand, one of my favorite movies, amazing movies, but but this one, the color palette was super quirky, right? In this particular scene where you are seeing, like, you don't really think about the reds or the purples and the pinks and the greens and all that working together, but it looks beautiful. It works so well. And you can see how they're unifying the color by not having strict like primary colors or secondary colors. They're still using, you know, if you see this pink right here, it's not really like a true pink. It has a hint of this purple in it. Same thing, this gray is a cool gray, so it's got a hint of the purple. Same thing here. Everything's kind of unified, even though it's so separate. Suicide Squad, envious, you know, that green quality, and then complementing that with a purplish red. Okay, so complementary colors here, split complements, but very nice color palette here. Look at how dark it is, you know, nothing very light and airy. Deadpool, using those complementary colors as well of the red and green, but when you use it, you can use it in more of a neutral side. So more burgundies. And then instead of using straight green, you're using a greenish gray. And so that's why it pops, okay? Star Wars, same thing. You're using that wasteland, that emptiness, okay, but also calming at the same time. You've got Corpse Bride, that icy feeling, those blues. Spirited Away, a little bit. Notice how the color palette here significantly different from Suicide Squad, right? All light, so more tints. It's the purple mixed with the white, okay? Getting everything a little bit lighter. Aladdin, so also notice how cartoons were, animated movies were created back in the day versus now. These strong, powerful, like hues. It's almost straight out, not much white mixed with it, not much, it's just kind of like straight colors put on there, very direct. Loving the complementary colors in this movie. The red and the green together works so well. You can see that example here. Same thing here, orange and blue with Mad Max, that color theory of complements. Lost in translation, you've got the greens and the reds, but different. They're called split complements when it's not exactly green, not exactly red. Okay. Red and green again, Life of Pi. So you don't notice how much color theory is put into the movies you watch until you study it, and how emotion comes out. This particular death scene, right? Where you get that icy cold feeling, like totally different from here. This warmth. Okay. Now this particular scene was, if you've seen Life of Pi, he had a lot of anger. It was like peace, but anger at the same time. And that yellow and the red goes perfect with this movie. Okay. The peace that he has, the anger that he has at the same time. It's like that frustration versus here where it's like, ooh, we just iced over, it's very cold. And then to understand all this, if it's making sense right here, to further understand it, there's a book that's called The Pantone Guide to Communicating with Color. Highly recommend you get that book, okay? Because this book, if you watch my pastel video at the when I'm going through the books, I do open up this one. You can see the meaning of the color in this one. And more importantly, it gives you color swatches to work from. And that's really important too, okay? So I hope that helps.